On today's episode of Locked On Illini, we discuss one of the most important questions in all of college basketball. What should Keaton Wagler do?
You are Locked On Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome one, welcome all to another edition of Locked On Illini. Thank you all so much for making us your first listen each and every day. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Sports Network the number one sports network in the world. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. My name is Sonny Verma, your host here at Locked On, where, of course, I provide you coverage each and every day. On today's episode, we discuss the topic that all Illini fans want to discuss. I've made my stance very clear for the past couple weeks, but whether it's in the Talk Illini Discord, the major conversation, especially maybe just because I know the transfer period is open, but if you're an Illini fan, we're just kind of sitting here and waiting to see if the hashtag retention is going to happen or not. And again, the major conversation that seems to be going on amongst Illini fan groups is, does it make sense for Keaton Wagler to come back? Again, I've made myself clear on my thoughts, but what I wanted to do is to be fair and try to give an argument for both sides. And so even if you haven't quite decided what you would do, maybe one argument can sway you one way or the other. Now, I will say, who knows? I know Keaton's father actually does follow me on X, so maybe he stumbles across this. But, it's a decision that the Wagler family seemingly hasn't made yet. And I know they're very smart and nice individuals, and I mean that. For 95% of folks, would be a no-brainer decision and probably already made. But everything I've heard about the Wagler family is that they're just different. And I mean different in a positive way, that they really do have the best interest of their kids' future at heart, and that they're really going back and forth and trying to weigh the positives and negatives when it comes to the ultimate decision that they want to make. But okay, so first and foremost, I'll start with why he should come back, because I know that's what Illini fans want to hear. And, we know Keaton is on NBA radars at this point. He's a projected top, I've seen him as high as top 5 pick. But for the consensus is he's going to be at least a top 10 pick. So the lazy answer would be to go take the money, go take the opportunity, and why risk anything? But I would argue that just because you can go doesn't always mean that you should. And I think Keaton is one of those really special cases. That maybe for Keaton, it might make sense to come back. So let's start here. Right now, Keaton is being talked about, as I mentioned, as a top 10 pick, which is great. But the key question is he locked in there, or is he still climbing? Because there's a big difference between pick number 8 and pick number 2. We're not just talking about pride. I'm talking about millions upon millions of dollars. And just as importantly, perception. Because if Wagler does come back, he's not just going to be another good player on a good team. He becomes the guy, the face of the program, and the National Player of the Year candidate for a team that some publications have already said is the number one team, preseason team. And that's with the assumption that Keaton is not coming back. If Illinois is as good as we think they can be, again, you're talking about not just a Final Four team, but a team that many will consider to be the national champion favorite next year. And Keaton Wagler could be the face of that team. That's how you go from what's a really good prospect to the best player in the class. Now, we can talk about something that didn't exist, 5 years ago? NIL. Because, of course, that's what's going to change the equation. We're not talking about a player who has to decide between making $0 in college or millions upon millions in the NBA. Wagler supposedly is sitting around $1.5 million his freshman year, when you consider all the endorsements and whatnot. Now, I have heard lots of feedback that should Wagler ultimately decide to come back, he would absolutely be one of the, if not the highest paid player in the college basketball world. What number that is, I don't know. And anytime you hear a number from anyone who claims to be an expert, just know that they're just guessing. It's a lie. And I feel very strongly about that. But whether it takes $5 million, $6 million, $7 million, I do think that that is something that the Illini donors and mega donors are going to be willing to pay. Now, I don't think they're willing to pay that for anybody. And I know I've talked about on this show over the past couple of weeks that this Final Four appearance has made more people willing to invest their financial resources into this program. But I want to be very clear that that doesn't mean that it's an endless supply. You know, they may pay X amount for Keaton Wagler, but that does not mean that they would pay the same amount for another player in the transfer portal. But Keaton has endeared himself so much to not just the coaching staff, to the university, but to the donors themselves, that I do feel like there's really no ceiling on if Keaton truly does want to come back, that at least for year one. Actually, let me correct myself. Year one, let's just say roughly he goes in the top 8 in the NBA mock drafts. He'll make anywhere from $7 to $12 million. He's still going to ultimately make more money in the NBA, but it won't be such a huge difference in the sense of $12 million to $1.5 million. It would probably be closer to, let's just say $8 million to $6.5 million. But that doesn't factor in whatever endorsements he makes at the NBA level, because that's on top of the salary. But him coming back, and you're talking about, let's say he does lead the charge for this Illini team. We know the draft class this year is absolutely loaded. You're talking about guys who would be the number 1 pick in any other draft, be mocked at the number 4 spot this year or number 5 spot this year. Next year's draft class doesn't look nearly as strong. The last 2 freshman classes in college basketball have been fantastic. Next year's doesn't look as promising. So you're talking about Keaton Wagler getting a chance to return and be the face of not just college basketball, but this Illinois team that has tasted Final Four success this past year has a chance for essentially returning everybody and then possibly winning a national championship. Coming into this year, he was a underdog story. In fact, even a couple months into the season, I feel like Illinois was one of the only teams that was aware of Keaton. And so slowly Big Ten teams were starting to be made aware. And then it was that Purdue game where I think Keaton jumped into national relevance. And that's where the whole nation kind of noticed. But next year, that won't be the case. If Keaton did decide to come in, again, he, in my opinion, and you tell me if I'm wrong, I think he would probably be the preseason player of the year next year. He would be on all the preseason All-American lists, and he would be considered the star of college basketball. Another thing I wanted to address is Keaton going in the top 8 to top 10. Have any of you watched the NBA recently? Go take a look at the standings if you get a chance. There's 8 to 10 teams that are clearly just tanking and not being shy about it. You're talking about losing streaks of 8, 10 games for each one of those teams in the bottom 10. There's never been such a big divide between teams just simply not trying and teams trying to make the playoffs. And I say this respectfully. I'm a big fan of Keaton Wagler, but I think it's fair to say that Keaton's frame still could use a little bit more added weight. What I fear for Keaton is that I think, I want to get this out of the way, I think Keaton's going to be a fantastic NBA player no matter what he decides, whether he goes this year or whether he goes next year. But one thing that does worry me is that with all these teams, these dozen teams that simply are trying to tank and get the highest draft pick possible, well, if Keaton goes into a situation where, even in the Big Ten, we've seen him get beat up. If he goes to a team like, the Washington Wizards or the Chicago Bulls, where people are hoping for a top 5 pick, they aren't able to get a top 5 pick, maybe they get a guy like Keaton. You have high expectations, and Keaton Wagler is going to be a good basketball player, but he's not good enough solely to bring one of those trash teams into playoff category. And again, because he's skinny, because he's scrawny, it might take him a while to adjust to the NBA level, to adjust to the NBA speed. So isn't there an argument that combined with the potential success that he can have on the court, whether it's with his basketball team, whether it's him becoming player of the year, first team AP All-American himself, but maybe it's just as important the work that he can do off the court with Adam Fletcher, who again it's a cheat code that Illinois has. He can help build his body up, maybe gain another 25, 30 pounds. So that next year when he gets drafted, ideally in that top 3 scenario, maybe top pick overall, not only is he making millions upon millions dollars more, but he has an opportunity to step right in and be more physically ready for the NBA. We know, and I think even the most ardent supporters of Keaton will admit this, that should he declare for the NBA draft this year and he goes through those NBA combines, I just don't think that that environment is favorable for a guy like Keaton. He's not super fast. He's not super athletic. He can't jump out of a gym. So realistically, I feel like at least this summer, his NBA draft status is probably just it's either at its peak or it might start trending down. But if Keaton can put 2 solid years of game on tape, and he had that phenomenal freshman year, arguably, in my opinion, not arguably, the best freshman year in Illinois history, and then level it up for his sophomore year, well, then the doubts that NBA GMs and scouts might have about his lack of athleticism and his lack of speed, well, they all go away because now you've got 2 solid years of game tape to look at, to review, and to see that his game absolutely does translate to the highest of levels. That's my argument for Keaton coming back to the University of Illinois. You let me know. Does that sway you one way or the other? After this, I'm going to discuss why I think it's probably best for Keaton to move on. The NBA playoffs are here, where every possession matters, every matchup is magnified, and every game can swing a series. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get in on the action. You can bet just $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. The app makes it easy to follow the action with player stats, trends, and matchups all in one place. And during the playoffs, that extra insight really matters when you're looking at stars, role players, and key moments. It just makes the entire playoff experience more engaging from start to finish. Make sure you head to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel, play your game. And welcome back. Friendly reminder, if you haven't already, please consider joining the Everydayers Club. You get access to ad-free episodes and a Locked On Discord where all the Locked On hosts and the communities are all congregating in one place. So if that's something that interests you, please, it really does help support the show as well. Consider doing that. The link should be in the description. Okay, so on the previous segment, I discussed why it may make sense for Keaton Wagler to stay in Champaign for one more season. And again, I understand why that's a popular sentiment. I understand why Illini fans want that. They love the idea of running it back, competing for a title, building a potential legacy. But in this segment, I'm going to talk about why I think it might be a stronger argument that the smartest move Keaton make right now is to simply just go. And honestly, this might be simpler than people are making it. When you strip everything down, here's the reality. He's already a projected top 10 pick. He is already valued by NBA teams. And he has the potential to go where most players dream of being. So really, the question is, why wait? Because something fans that don't always necessarily talk about, the rookie contract, which I referenced in the first segment. Great, of course, millions upon millions of dollars. It absolutely is life-changing money, but it's not the goal. The goal is the second contract, and that's when you hit generational money. If you're Keaton Wagler and you have the ceiling that people think that you have, you're not chasing that initial $30 million contract. No, you are going after that $200 million contract, that $250, maybe even more dollar contract that you get with your second contract. And here's the key. The sooner you get to the NBA, the sooner you get to that second deal. If you enter the draft now, as a 19-year-old top 10 pick, he's on a timeline where you're talking about a 4-year rookie deal, and then hopefully if things go the way they want, you get that extension, and then another contract in his prime. If he waits a year, that entire timeline shifts, and you cannot get that 1 year back. Let's not overcomplicate this. Keaton Wagler is already a Final Four player. He is a high-level producer, a 6'6", 6'7" wing who can shoot, score, and create. And that's exactly what the NBA wants. The numbers back it up. 18 points per game, 5 rebounds, over 4 assists, shooting over 40% from 3. That is the typical profile for someone in the NBA lottery. The NBA is not asking, can he play? They already know he can. What they're asking is, can he be developed into a star or a superstar? And when you're being projected into the top 10, I feel like you have your answer. And we can talk about the biggest risk of coming back. And I'm not even talking about injury here. I'm talking about expectations. Because think about it. If Wagler does come back, he's not just a good player. As I mentioned, he's probably the preseason player of the year. He's going to be the face of a top 5 team. He's going to be expected to dominate. And here's the problem. If he does great, people will say, of course, that's what we expected. But what if he's the same or slightly worse, maybe a tad bit more inefficient, maybe a tad bit more less dominant? Well, now the narrative changes. Now it becomes, hey, did Keaton Wagler plateau? Maybe he's not as special as we thought. And that could be just as dangerous because that kind of perception is going to matter too. It's the biggest question. Everyone assumes that he's going to come back, that he's going to improve, and that he's going to vault himself to a top 3 pick. But I ask, what if he doesn't? What if he's just really good again? Because if that happens, well, maybe he just stays where he's at. And the other reality is that the NBA, well, they just prefer younger players, right? They want to develop you themselves. They want to help you shape your game. They want to control your progression. So even if he comes back and plays well, he still might not be viewed the same way. And I hate to do this, but we don't have to look very far for the proper case that I'm kind of alluding to. Just take a look at Tomislav Ivičić. Last year, he was outstanding in his first year for the Illini. And he was showing up relatively late, to be fair, in some NBA mock drafts. He came back to improve, but he made his thoughts clear. The game plan was always to come to Champaign for 2 years, get better, win some games, and then move on to the NBA. And then what happened? Last year, he put up solid numbers, but now I don't see him on any mock drafts. In my opinion, he's further away from the NBA conversation than he was at this point a year ago. And then I didn't bring it up before, but let's just talk about the injury aspect of it, right? All it takes is one bad landing, one knee tweak, one lingering issue, and everything changes. We've seen players fall from lottery picks to late first to out of the league entirely. That risk is always going to be there. So we can simplify it this way. If Wagler goes now, he locks in his millions. He can kickstart his NBA career, and he starts the clock for the path to generational wealth. If he stays, he might improve his stock. He might make more money, and he might win more. But there's a lot of what ifs in that statement, because right now his value is established. He is widely recognized, and he is desired. I think that's probably the best time to go. Not after a risk, potential regression, or becoming a question mark. So when Illini fans say he should come back, I get it. I really do. But if you're Keaton Wagler, if you're his parents, maybe his inside circle, you have to think bigger. This isn't about one more year in college. This is about your career, your timeline, your financial future. And when you look at it that way, the answer becomes a lot clearer. Go. Take the opportunity, start the clock, and go chase that second contract.
I'm Clea Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. UCLA made history by winning its first NCAA Women's Basketball National Championship, dominating South Carolina 79-51. The Bruins controlled the game from start to finish with elite defense and balanced scoring, finishing the season 37-1. Star center Lauren Betts was named Most Outstanding Player, leading a team effort that capped a 31-game winning streak. Under head coach Corey Close, UCLA secured a landmark title that has been decades in the making. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes. I'm coming back for more every time. Mazda puts that same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment. Putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
And welcome back. So let me know what you think. Let me know what you thought before the episode started. Did your opinion sway one way or the other? Again, we're going to have a lot more transfer portal talk on Locked On Illini, so don't you worry about that. But I kind of hinted towards this during one of the post-game lives, and I figured I'd kind of elaborate on it a little bit more. I get why Illini fans are discussing this Keaton Wagler story. It's been an incredible run, and he's kind of led us to the Final Four, a place that a lot of even the most optimistic fans thought that we could not reach again. But I'm going to repeat my thoughts from before. I think that it's time that Illini fans just change their mindset. Duke fans aren't wondering if Cameron Boozer's coming back. Arizona fans aren't wondering if Burries is coming back. We have to realize that let's take a look at this past history. Brad Underwood and this coaching staff is going to bring really, really good basketball players here to the University of Illinois. And I don't doubt that the same thing is going to happen next year. When we lose players in the transfer portal, Brad is able to, despite, panic that starts with Illini fans, Brad inevitably tends to restock and get better players in the Illini program. Well, when we talk about Keaton Wagler, this is a story that needs to be celebrated. And maybe now we need to switch to the mindset that, hey, Keaton had a fantastic year. Good for him. But you know what? He needs to go on to the NBA. It's great for the program. I do need to mention that. Illinois continually churning out players to the NBA draft. That works in locker rooms, living rooms. When Brad Underwood, Orlando Antigua, Jeff Alexander, they go into a kid's living room, they can keep pointing to guys like Terrence Shannon Jr., Ayo Dosunmu, and Kasper Shonis and Will Riley, and saying, hey, you're a wing, you're talented, we want you at Illinois, and look, you come here, we'll develop you, we're going to win, and you're going to be able to jump to the next level. Keaton should just probably be the latest name in that conversation. And Illini fans just need to rest easy that hopefully we can have another Keaton next year. Whether it is a top 20 prospect like Quentin Coleman or Lucas Murillo, we don't know who it's going to be. But just like a year ago, we didn't know this year's team would have Keaton Wagler or David Mirkovic. I understand we all want guys to stay 2, 3, 4 years. But even if Keaton Wagler came back, had a fantastic sophomore season, and Illinois had some postseason success, let's be honest. Most Illini fans would once again be like, well, why not come back for a junior year? You didn't quite win the national championship. Why not give it another go? And this is just kind of an endless cycle of conversation. And I think a lot of that has to do with us being in uncharted territory. I get it. I know in the late 80s and early 2000s, Illinois was always one of the best teams in the country, but those are also very different times, right? Even in those 2000s team, Darren Williams, I think only averaged like 4 or 5 points his freshman year. It's a completely different world compared to what it was 21 years ago and even longer than that when we talk about the teams in the 80s. The reality is the top programs in the country, well, they're cycling through rosters. they're cycling through their best players because of the rule, right? No player can jump straight from high school to the NBA as of this recording. So if that's the case, you're going to have a lot of one and dones. And even though we might want it the other way, we just have to accept the fact that we can't control that. We cannot change that. And we're fortunate enough, and maybe this is the positive spin on it, that these one and done players want to continue coming to Illinois, want to continue to be developed. They can look at guys that I mentioned before, the Kasparises, the Ios, the Will Rileys, the Terrence Shannon Juniors, and trust that the staff is going to be able to repeat the process again, because they've got proof of concept at this point. And so that's just something I urge Illini fans to kind of consider, that we don't always have to yearn and want to beg or try to just come up with arguments for players to come back to Illinois. I get it. A lot of you are just Illinois basketball fans. You could care less about the NBA, and you're not paying attention to what former Illini are doing at the NBA level because you don't like the game and what it's turned into. I get that, and I respect that. But we also have to deal with reality, and the NBA is still the ultimate goal of all these players. Okay, Keaton Wagler, when he was growing up, his ultimate goal wasn't to play for the University of Illinois. His ultimate goal was probably to play in the NBA. And we're just very fortunate that Illinois is one of the programs that was able to get him there. And what I feel comfort in is that Illinois can help with that dream for a lot of young high school basketball players out there. All right, so that's going to wrap it up for this edition of Locked On Illini. If you haven't already, make sure you hit the like button on this video. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. We've been shooting up with subs over the past couple of weeks, and it's all because of this amazing community. I love each and every one of you. If you're not already in it, please join the Talk Illini Discord. The link is in the description. It's all the talk about Keaton coming back, which I have not participated in because I feel like I've made my thoughts clear on this. But I can see that, because we haven't had any words from #the retention yet, that people are getting a little stir crazy and talking about whether it makes sense for Keaton to come back. Right now, it's probably about 50-50 in the Discord. So definitely come join the conversation. All right, that's going to wrap things up for me here today. Until next time, ILL. Love you guys.